Hi guys, welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. And today I am going to be reviewing Boosh, The Daughter of Redwinter by Ed McDonald. This is the first book in the Redwinter Chronicles. I think it's going to be a trilogy. I think Redwinter trilogy, maybe. This was an arc, so I would like to thank NetGalley for giving me access to that. And this book is coming out at the end of this month, so I wanted to go ahead and get this out there. And it's good because it has been like 2 months since I've done a review here on the channel. The last thing that I reviewed there was one thing after Touch of Light. There was one thing after that, and I don't know what it was. What did I freaking review after Touch of Light? Touch of Light was like March 1. Ogres. Ogres was the last thing that I reviewed, like mid-March, end of March. That's the last review I did. And if I leave something for a long time, I have difficulty beginning things. So I have difficulty restarting things. It's just so hard to get back into the groove. So whatever. This is going to serve as my re-entry into the review space, and I'm going to, review this book. So without wasting any more time, let's get down to business. Let's talk about The Daughter of Redwinter. So Ed McDonald wrote the Raven's Mark trilogy, which begins with Blackwing. I have not read the whole series, but I have read the first book, Blackwing, and I loved it. It was one of the biggest surprises I had last year, where Leanna assigned me the book, and, I didn't think I was going to love any of them, but I loved Blackwing, kind of a Western, post-apocalyptic, Lovecraftian mystery novel. I don't even know how to explain that. But it was so good and so tense and really frightening at times. The horror element Ed McDonald is really, really good at. And just right away you're thrust into this really fascinating world. And I have not seen how that trilogy shapes out, but I did love that first book. So here, this is a more kind of traditional setting rather than the world has been destroyed and it's, in the Outlands or, gunslinger type thing. Here, it's a more traditional fantasy world. There's clans and thales and vans. So, is that Celtic or Norse or something to that effect? But it's very it's very Northern Europe, I suppose. And so the world is kind of less unique to start with, and it has a much slower kind of world-building process than does Blackwing, because Blackwing, you gotta explain why everything is madness to start with. But the world does feel like it has a rich history through oblique references to wars that are past or ages that are past or heroes, and they don't explain them all. They're just oh, this is that from that war, random people we're talking about, which is cool because you don't get a lot of when they're talking about those particular things. Now, before I go into that, what is this freaking story about? This story is about Rain, who is not an orphan, shockingly. Her mom works for her mom is a scribe or whatever, and her mom doesn't like her, so she didn't live with her mom. She's somewhere else. The 17-year-old girl who is currently, when we meet her at the very beginning, she is on the run with some nuns who she has taken up with because these nuns can kind of see the dead, and she can as well. She can see the ghosts of the dead. And having what's called the grave site is just verboten in this world, and the clan leaders, they hunt down, and it's kind of like a witch hunt. And so they hunt them down and they kill them wherever they can. And so currently, Rain is behind this fortress, this old fortress of these monks that are long gone, while it's being besieged by one of these lords demanding the nun that's with her that can see the dead. And so we pick up right at the very beginning. Rain is outside in the snow, and she sees this girl who is injured, and she rescues her because she is being chased not only by the Lord, but by what is called a Droween, which are the wizards. They're kind of like warrior priests, wizard things. And so she rescues her, and that's kind of where the plot goes from there. And so the beginning of this, the first quarter of this book is really exciting, with a lot of stuff happening that you don't really know why it's happening. You learn about the Droween and about their magic abilities, which are it's really cool that they enter these trances and cross these gates each gate of which gives different access to kind of a different power, and the higher you go, like the highest one is like, oh, there's no such thing, you can't access the highest one, and then the sixth one is the forbidden one, and then almost no one can use like the fifth one, and so on and so forth, as it goes up. But like the first one is like the most common. And so and really kind of after that introduction, it's not even really 20%, maybe the first 15%. After that introduction, we find Rain in Redwinter. And that's where the main thrust of the plot takes place. Rain having this ability to see the dead among these people, the Drowing, whose like holy job it is to punish anybody with that. Like not just the lay lords, but like the magic users. If they know you have the gravesite, they smush you. So she's got to keep this secret while living in this mountain fastness. Redwinter is both military fort, but also wizard school. If the kids at Hogwarts like fought a lot and didn't really get along that much, or Hermione had any friends outside of Ron and Harry type thing. And the magic of the Drowing and the world building really is one of the most interesting parts of this novel. Like, where do the Drowing get their magic? What do each of the gates do? How do they access those things? Why can people see the dead? Why is that a bad thing? Why the Redwinter is these wizards have the power they do? All of that is really, really interesting. I don't think it is always handled in the most adept way. A lot, and I mean a lot. Like, there are obscure references that people like drop that, like where the world feels lived in. But anytime we get an explanation about anything, it's a lot of characters sitting around discussing things, which is fine. It doesn't really bother me, but there's a lot of sitting around and talking about things. And anybody's played an RPG, if you have the scholarly character, if there's a character who is, like a studious academic, that particular trope, at some point that person is going to rattle off, this long history of like why things are the way they are. And this happens with enough frequency to where it's noticeable. Now, that's going to bother some people more than it bothered me. Infodumps don't bother me. Like, hearing explanations about why something is the way it is, I call it a veteran RPG player, it doesn't bother me. But some people really dislike this method of exposition. And so, just be aware that is there. And I really like the school setting. I like Rain's relationships and interactions with the students who are there. And, the students they're not any new favorite characters, but you do have variations on, certain fantasy tropes, but they are likable enough to where I wasn't just like, who cares about this? Like, they all have their own distinct voice and personality, so I really liked the different ways that Rain responded to each one of these students and the people above her, because she, has no rank at all. But my main problem with Daughter of Redwinter is this middle kind of half, this middle 50%, the stuff that takes place at the school, because Rain is not an active protagonist in this section. It is a lot of passively responding to events that are occurring. She is reactionary instead of proactive. And it's not that what's happening isn't interesting, it's just that she's not really part of any of it. It's just, we go to this place and see that this happened, we go to this place, but she's not doing any of it because she wants to. She's doing it because it's just, part of what she's supposed to be doing. It's duties and stuff like that. And while that's happening, instead we get a lot of inner monologue or inner thoughts of Rain, and a lot of that is repetitive. There's a lot of, I don't feel any pain, like I don't feel this grief that I should be feeling, or I don't know how I feel about myself as a person, or as these people as, friends or love interests. I don't know how to feel about that. Or, I can't let them find out that I can see the dead. It's a lot of that. Like, in every scene, she's thinking that kind of stuff. And that this passivity and the repetition of that really slowed down that middle section for me. However, don't let that be a deterrent to you. It is obvious what McDonald is doing. He's world building and, creating stakes and establishing relationships, and all of that is fine. If you are a veteran RPG player, it is nothing new. Like, especially if you like JRPGs where there's really slow relationship building, like character building, world building stuff before crap hits the fan, then you'll have no problem. The last 30% of this book, at some point, and it didn't even telegraph that it was coming, but at one point in the book, and it's, I don't know, like 70% in or something, because I had the Kindle, I don't know. I read that last 30% in one sitting. It was so incredibly gripping and tense and just so interesting. It was excellent. And that middle section, I'm struggling. I'm like, what am I going to rate this book or whatever? But then this is the perfect example of a book where the ending section, that last race toward the finish, really elevates what came before and changes your whole opinion about the book. I can't speak highly about that ending stuff enough. Ed McDonald is so good at writing really tense, urgent scenes, in these individual scenes from moment to moment that just feel tense and frightening, and he's excellent at layering in these elements of horror. So good. Like, I cannot wait for book 2. I think there's a couple things in the end that are rushed a little bit. Like, there's one thing that's resolved like that, where one person's like, oh, okay, and then it's just done. I'm like, I mean, come on. Certainly we can get a little more fanfare than that. But I cannot wait for the second book. It is just really, really good. I love when the mystery picks up and just starts unraveling. I think Rain's graveside ability is just so freaking cool when it comes to like murder mystery solving, because she has this ability no one else has. So cool. And McDonald also does this one really awesome thing dealing with colors, and I can't say any more than that, but it is so freaking cool. I've never seen anything like it. I was just like, what is this? Just just awesome. Like, read it just for that part. You'll know when you see it. Just an awesome, like, what? Really cool part of the book. And so, while this is, a story about magic and a mystery to be solved and set in kind of like an academy school type setting, this is really a story about grief and loss and how we deal with that, and what we would do to not feel that kind of pain. Like, think about any trauma or grief that you've been through. Like, what would you do to not experience that incredible pain? Like, what lengths would you go to not feel like that? You know what I mean? So it's about the healthy and unhealthy ways that we cope with grief and loss. Related to that, it is also about power and the reasons that we strive for power. How power itself can be this kind of freedom. About how if you accumulate enough power, you can not have to feel afraid anymore. You don't have to run anymore. You don't have to grieve anymore, as long as you have enough power to kind of shape the world the way you want. Or, that's how we as humans think. Oh, if I only have this, that's gonna make me happy. Or if I get this and I make people afraid of me, oh, then I won't have to, feel weak anymore. And, these reasons why we search for levels of power above our own. How when you accumulate enough power over enough people, that people stop being people. They start being numbers. When you're in charge of 10,000 people, like, one person's like, oh, well, okay, like, one person's dead, 2 people dead. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, I don't know the names of all 10,000 of these people. Sorry. Yeah. And so how the higher you get up on the power scale, the less human the people under you become. And so it's this really interesting study of power. But I think the themes that I like the most in this, because I'm a school teacher, are these themes of identity, especially for teenagers. I think there's a lot to say to the younger crowd in this book. Rain is 17, and not just Rain, but the people in Redwinter and the people around her. It is a novel of self-discovery, of discovering who you are, and not only who you are, but who you are independent of other people, because we all know that all of us adopt, different levels of personae depending on the people or the situation that we are in. So some of us do that, delve so deep that you don't even know who you are when you're not in those situations because you're so used to masking or, taking on this persona, etc. And it says a lot about embracing those parts of you that you had you didn't ask for, that you're just born with these innate qualities or these outward features, and just being okay with those things no matter what other people think. I mean, unless, if you're born a douchebag, you need to fix that. Like, that's not what it is. But it's like, for me with Asperger's, rather than trying to be who I thought I needed to be, if I had been diagnosed earlier with Asperger's and just embraced, like, hey, like, it's okay, there's nothing wrong with me, as some people would like to say, I just process information differently than you, and that's okay. Like, I am excellent at certain things while I'm terrible at other things, and I try to get better, but not having that self-loathing for things that we can't control. And how often are our teenagers going through this? Teenagers, whether they pretend to be happy or not, every bleeding one of them is wrestling with some form of self-loathing, because children, and not just children, our culture and society are freaking mean. We've decided that as a people, we're just gonna be mean. And it's, I'm 4 years old, and it's worse than I've seen it. School is certainly worse than it was 10 years ago as far as how nasty these kids are to each other. So I think in this book, as we see Rain and the other kids, teenagers, 20-somethings that are kind of wrestling with their identity, I think that a lot of people, not just kids, can relate to the struggles that these people are going through. And the last thing I want to say, I just want to read a couple quotes that just really stuck out to me. Her mother told her she was special, which is a dangerous thing for a child to believe. Now, there's nothing wrong with, you thinking that you're special as opposed to nobody cares. But we all know, as a teacher, these children that are told nothing but they are special, they are exceptional, they are Ubermensch, while the rest of the subhumans don't deserve to kiss the feet of, this patrician noble walking through it is these children who have no accountability and have no concept of the rules applying to them, because their parents have told them that they are special, their whole family is special, and that they are not subject to the rules that the rest of us down here on planet Earth must follow. So you got me with that one, McDonald. And then there's another quote that y'all know, this quote infuriated me. It's so true, but it infuriates me because it's such an accurate depiction of the way things are, which just violates my entire sensibilities, because it doesn't have to be like this. This is the way it is, but it shouldn't be, and we shouldn't be okay with it. So here we go. One guy says, "Only the weak insist that life be fair. Once they make themselves strong, they stop caring. The laws are there to protect those who have the money to help make them." Why? Just because you had a hard time in life, like you are now comfortable, let's say you're now wealthy, and you're now wealthy and powerful. Why, when you had to suffer to get here, why are you so discompassionate toward those who are also suffering? I don't understand it. Just because you suffered, doesn't mean everyone else has to. Why are you a bad person who wants other people to suffer just because you did? That's terrible. You should not want anybody else to experience your trauma. That's mean. And don't even get me started about the laws are there to protect those who have the money to help make them. Guys, the word privilege comes from privus, the Latin word privus, which means private, and lex legis, which means law. So the word privilege, ignore the political context of that word, and just look at the actual context of that word. It literally means private law. If a law applies to you or a rule applies to you differently than it does to other people, it shouldn't. And to paraphrase Commander Vimes, the law must apply to everyone equally or it isn't justice, it's tyranny. So, I got worked up with those quotes. Thank you, Ed McDonald. Nice, nice, nice. And so, I really, really enjoyed this book. It just took me a while. Again, I'm getting back into reading just in general, and I don't read the best on my Kindle, which is, how I access this. So the things that I've mentioned bothered me less than they might bother other people. Reading it just to see the resolution, the last 30% is absolutely, absolutely phenomenal. I enjoyed this. I enjoyed the crap out of this book. So on the Kingpin approval system, I give this an excellent plus. Excellent plus, fantastic rating. Man, if only I hadn't felt like that middle section dragged, you could push it over into the superb. Now, you're talking about those last 30 pages, that's a superb plus. Them last 30 pages for sure. And out of 5 stars, I give this book 4.5 stars. Doesn't matter where it was, reading about halfway through, that ending, boom, 4.5 stars. I absolutely recommend this book. If you have not read Ed McDonald, and you're looking for something more traditionally fantasy, but with a different twist for sure, if you're already an Ed McDonald fan, you will definitely see things in here that Ed McDonald excels at in Blackwing. The characters are slightly younger than they are in the Ravensmark series, but don't let that deter you. You should absolutely go and pre-order this book. It is out the 28th of June, so check that out. I will be having a live discussion with Leanna about this closer to release, or probably a week after release, so that some people had a chance to read it. So check us out then. That'll probably be the beginning of July. But guys, that's it for me today. As always, information about my Patreon and Discord is down in the description, and I'll see you next time, guys.